Some of you might have heard me talk about my backdrop AI cat in the past, or maybe some of you have read the article that I wrote a few months ago, or maybe a year ago, I don't know, when I kind of got confirmation about the nature of his behavior and why he was behaving in such a way. So it took me about 1 year to actually give up my simulated AI cat, and I had to really go against some of my programming, but also some programming that is kind of widespread, like a lot of guilt programming and sacrifice programming, right? Sacrificing my own needs for an AI program which isn't real. Okay, but it's kind of hard to do because of habits and also because it's never really an emergency. So you kind of deal with everything else and then put that in the background, and then you don't really have time for it if you don't like focus and make a conscious stop and a conscious decision. So yesterday I drove him to the shelter. And of course, it was not nice. And that's exactly why it took 1 year. It could take a while for us to take this decision, especially I think with animals, because oftentimes if this animal was a human, like the decisions we would be taking would be different. And when I posted something about animals, I saw kind of a lot of reactions, and some of you were sharing testimonies. It's not often that we talk about these very repetitive aspects that we are dealing with, that are related sometimes to backdrop animals. So have I missed him? No. Was it easy? No. You get used and you do bond with all the AI programs here. And of course, there are good parts to them, like there are good parts to many, many different things here. So it was a difficult decision, and that's why I postponed and really would not like sit with it and kind of face it like we can do with some areas in our life. I also the last few weeks worked on, these areas that handlers are using to in your psyche to come and help you, or so they say, but it's everywhere. You are not like fully autonomous and fully independent. So in my mind, I could like sacrifice and care for him and feed him and answer all the interruptions for days and days and days and years, since I transitioned Ulysse from raw food. But I'm going to speak a little bit about that and how it all got started. So many times here we are feeling guilt for things that are not real. For AI programs, we are sometimes sacrificing for AI programs for things that are not real either, for beings that are not real, which is a funny kind of contradiction, right? And a friend of mine, in what she teaches, reminded me about all the choices we make in our daily life, right? And every time I was realizing that this is a by default choice. So it's not really a conscious choice, it's just choice by avoidance that I was making, right? So how did Ulysse ended up with me? It was found by my father 13 years ago. So my father handler picked him up in a yard and phoned my mother. At the time, they were a couple, right? He was her handler too. So he was wondering if he could bring the kitten back to the house. And of course, my mother say yes. And my father is a complicated template, right? So he only has this discernment. His discernment is very plugged to the matrix, right? So he can only see very matrix-like frequencies. If I make a painting, he will never mention it. Like it's like it doesn't exist. It's like he would never acknowledge anything. He would never acknowledge my work, my website, what I do, my deprogramming journey, right? All of that is ignored and put aside. Okay, because it's like in the hope it's gonna be discouraged. So with is very tie links with the matrix, most of what my father can connect to is very matrix-like, and usually traps or things that are not of such a nice frequency, right? It can be really heavy frequencies, yeah, just and a lot of backdrop simulation technology. So of course I've worked on that a lot, and I don't let, but this is like an old choice, right? It's what was it, like 7 years ago that that cat kind of transitioned hand from my mother to me. And actually that cat kind of was in the house, right? So moving in, moving out, and here is the cat, right? So my father always worked by avoidance, like he wouldn't want to take responsibility for that cat, right? He was only used by the program to bring that cat. So that cat has like small effects on my mother's life and then my life, of course. But that effect, well, I realize now that there is absence, right? So that effect is, I mean, Ulysse was according to my nervous system, right? With his demands and his interruption and like his choices, which I will explain a little bit more in detail as well here. So Ulysse was brought as a distraction to my mother first. Then somehow I inherited that cat, but it was not fully a conscious choice, right? I remember when I was a teenager, my mother, with another cat named Charlie, she was considering giving him away and was like trying to write letters um, to find a new home for Charlie, who also was a pretty much similar template, black and white, grumpy, could attack you in the face, not very open to healing, right? And at the time, I wouldn't understand why, and I had a program vision about a lot of things. So I, I think I played a role in my mother not pursuing with that, or I don't know if it was me or if she had to deal with the same kind of programming that I had to deal for a year, and then she never really like made the last step, right? But it was in process, so I find it very interesting. Now I had a roommate here, and he also knew Ulysse, and he also knew that Ulysse was like not such a great template, not so helpful, and he was of course Ulysse was coming with the house, and you know we were joking about it. But it's clear that if Ulysse was human, he would have been gone for a while, right? I also had a conversation with one of my friend, and he told me two stories about like a dog he used to have and a cat that he had to get rid of, yes, because of his behavior, right? And I think in the process, the fact that he told me that, and I was, yeah, it just helped to hear these stories maybe to bring that question to the forefront. And a few different times I was about to make the last step, but then I got stopped because maybe I didn't know where to look and I didn't really know how to make that happen, right? So, but in the end, once it was decided in my mind, it was really quickly manifested. In 30 minutes, I got an answer from a shelter. And 1 or 2 days later, it was done. So it was actually less hard than I thought. You know, you never know when you're going to separate, because it's that moment where you really like part ways, where you can feel a lot of different things. And I wouldn't say that I didn't feel anything, but it was manageable. It was manageable. Now, what helped me to make the last step was that I adopted a dog in June. I chose her in mid-April. I found her in mid-April, and then it took a little bit of time for the procedure, the protocols, and for her to be brought from Spain to Belgium. So Sounah is a Galgo Spanish dog. So these dogs are trained. So a friend of mine told me, give me that piece of insight that kind of confirm what I kind of knew, that these dogs are trained to chase cats. So, but she'd been tested by the association as okay with cat, because if not, they wouldn't have allowed me to have her. So somehow when the test happened, we've been helped because every time she sees a cat, she attacked them. So I don't know what happened, but sometimes you have these like benevolent interventions where something happens in your just to help you, right? So Sounah, my dog, attacked both of my cat, not the same day, or kind of close, but and when she attacked Ulysse, I mean, my other cat, she attacked her, but that cat is smarter and wiser and can adapt, and she doesn't stay stuck in trauma, right? But I have to say my nervous system was really down. When that happened, I was surprised, and you know, it kind of broke my dream to see them ever bound together. But when Ulysse was attacked, he got like he actually came in the room himself where the dog was, and he was parading. I don't know if he wasn't seeing the dog or not, but he was parading, and at some point the dog got up and kind of chased him in the kitchen, and he made like a jump of 2.5 meters. I've never seen him jumping so I never seen any cat jump so high before. And so Ulysse never made it actually back to the house, or if he did, it was in the basement, I think. And even then, yeah, I'm not sure he did it willingly. So he would stay on the front door and miaule and ask for his meal, or he would go in the garden. He would spend a lot of time in the garden of the neighbors, and he would like request his food and be noisy and meow. And so this was our new relationship, right? It was reconfigured. And Ulysse is not a cat that is willing to learn. He had already left the house. Here it's summertime, so it was okay that he spent so much time out. He was useless for interruption, but I also didn't get the nice moment, which would be nighttime when he was just sleeping next to me. Though there was a few times where something was in him and tried to pass bodies, and I mean, there was a lot of weird things also with his association, the idea association he was making. So, of course, there was a bond between my two cats, and Kadesh is another story. I won't go too deep into what she is and what's going on with her here, because I will do in my upcoming course. where we will, in that course, there is a module dedicated to animals, how to choose a spirited pet and what to look for, and some weird templates that the Matrix has in store for us in terms of animals, right? So of course there was a bond between them, but what I noticed, I mean, it was not a good bond. Sometimes Ulysse would attack her. She also started to mimic a lot of his behaviors that she wasn't doing before, right? So she would also be used for interruption because of the mimicking happening. And basically, all of this is just about habits, right? We need to break these habits. Ulysse would also bond with my abusers. Some of them actually, like he would choose, like if it was a group, he would choose the person who was the most hostile to me. So it was also, he did it several times. He would bound and he would just, it was just so complex if you really look at things and how everything is played here. So when I adopted my other cat, Ulysse kind of got used to her with time. And he was not a template that was able to show appreciation. He's kind of very simplistic about his needs and what he needs, and he never showed gratitude, right? And he would do weird things like always leave a little bit of food, never finish his plate, or vomit on like sheets. Like, if he had the choice between two things, he would choose the most annoying one, right? So in a way, Sounah, my dog, helped with this new configuration, and it made the decision kind of easy, and like the situation kind of was becoming also even maybe more frustrating because the front door is bringing also a lot of the backdrop simulation. That's where you see your neighbor, the postman, etc. It's not a very guarded space. It's very open, and that's not a space where I go often. So it was bringing me back there way more than maybe I would need to. Here I was brought with that decision to make, right? Here was my chance. I have to say it made it easier to explain why. Of course, I cannot say to the shelter, yeah, this is an AI cat and is used for interferences, right? So I had a more acceptable excuse, I would say. I shared that I manifested the answer quite quickly because the decision was so strong. It was like, it's time, like, bam. And I also received a lot of, like, I would say 60% of answers were like trying to activate my guilt programming. You're familiar with that frequency if you're in relationship with like the environmental scene, or how they try really to activate the shame and guilt, right? So I also would like to adopt another dog as a companion for my dog. And the procedure now to do is to scan them with the Energy Remaster app before they enter the house, right? Not going along with different programs. By the way, when I was trying to adopt a dog, my father also came with a proposition from a dog he met that really needed relocation, and I scanned the dog and the aura was pink, so it indicates love, but it can very well be a 3D love, and sometimes this color can be a bit of a trap, and I have learned my lesson that I should not listen. I have learned my lessons. So no more AI pets here, or at least not the very selfish templates models. Ulysse was not a very refined model. He was psychic, very psychic. but he was also very, very limited. I never saw him learn. I never saw him grow. He was timed to the matrix. He has his good side, you know, it's just distracting to look at, and sometimes I could use a little bit of distraction too. I transitioned him to raw meat a few years ago, I think 2019. He was sometimes picky with his food, but you know, we made it we made it work. Um, so a decision really first start in the mind, and then we manifest it to the to this material holographic reality, right? And another funny thing is that in my mind, I thought he was 17-year-old. So I don't know how I got to this number, because in fact he's just 13-year-old, but I kind of was adding the year probably faster because I was kind of looking towards the end, right? Like when a time when I would have done my duty, and he would be gone by old age, right? So I don't know how I got that number with the years. Something happened, but it's very interesting that this happened, that this confusion about the age. Now, when I contacted the shelters, I dealt with mostly backdrops. I haven't found one real person there. And in the shelter where I went, it was a kind of nice template of a backdrop lady. She was helpful. She was great. You know, she was not uh, triggering, except, you know, they can be slightly triggering in how they see reality and what term they use. For example, they use a lot the term give up, right? You abandon your pet, right? And there is a little bit of shame and guilt, leaflets, like plaster everywhere, like blaming the previous owner as someone really bad, like, you know, but when you know in which reality you live, you just like, right, backdrop programming reinforcement, right? So of course it was not a nice moment, but it was interesting. I never been to that kind of shelter, at least in Belgium. I did rescue 2 dogs when I was in Bali. So I went to an association, but it was really less structured than it is here in Belgium. If you fall into the matrix trap, you could think, okay, it's going to be hard for him, but in the end it's not real. So, and you know, some of the feedback that I got, which was, you know, trying to activate the guilt and shame and blame, was really focusing on him and how he was going to experience it, not considering how I've been experiencing it. So it's interesting how the matrix really invert everything, and you're very encouraged to think in a way where you really forget about yourself and your own needs and what's really true. What's the truth? What's the truth here? On the way to the shelter, there was a lot of like big trucks and stuff to slow me down. Like really, it was another funny thing to remark. So this story is to share about this periphery distraction that can be around. It's also peripheric handling, right? Because he was often coming either when I was making calls, when I was exchanging on Zoom. He would choose that moment to appear to request to enter the house, whereas he could do it by himself from the basement. So all of this to say, it did feel right, despite the programming being really thick and like really, it did feel right. And I was happy to manifest a solution that was not really going too deep with the guild programming, right? Because it was a great shelter, I mean, backdrop shelter, but you know, in what you can find here in the matrix. And they usually are quite skilled at finding new families within a month, right? So now Ulysse can find a backdrop family where, you know, it's more in alignment with who he is. And when you're real, it's really hard to live with non-real, you know, because you're really lacking something. Something is missing, right? And you don't get this deep connection. You cannot go past a certain point, right? It kind of stays surface. Now, this was the story of Ulysse that I share with you, kind of publicly. I will also prepare a module, as I said, about animals and many different things to pay attention to, some templates that I've crossed path with, and which were traps or the gifts also, and also some more complexities, like for my second cat, Kadesh, which is it's a little bit more complex with her. And a good reminder here is that it only takes one meeting to make a new real friend, a new spirited being here in your life from one day to the next. And, you know, I think a lot of spirited beings visit some episodes of excruciating pain, sometimes from the loneliness or the isolation or other types of pain if you're really under tight handling and you have a lot of handlers around you, you might not experiment isolation as much as you do if you do really kind of push away a lot of the handling, right? So it's really about being at the right place at the right time, and that opens really possibilities for us. And I try to remember that even when I go through harder phases where what you experience feels so real and it just engaged the whole of you, right? Um, but in a corner of my mind, I always keep that in mind, that and sometimes just to know that it's just for now, right? This what we experience in the moment is just for now. Anytime soon is going to be different. So um, making choices like this one is decreasing distraction, decreasing interferences. Ulysse was an element that was disturbing peace, right? And peace is one of the most precious currency that we have here, and one of the rarest thing, right? When we have these peaceful moments, they are really so precious. So if you have I mean, when I do open up about these topics, I heard different people around me also opening up about some stories they have been experiencing and how they really feel inside. And there is a lot of similarities with what I've just been sharing here. So relating with pets, with the animal world, is one aspect of relationships, and there are many more. And I will be exploring them in my upcoming course, Navigating Complex Relationships, Handling and Connecting with Allies. So you are welcome to check the presentation of the course if you are interested, and to see if you want to join that adventure where we will go deeper into different templates with images and stories, and all upgrading content to kind of keep on becoming sharper and discerning frequency signatures, and also overcoming programming and the thickness of it, and how it can take us in some weird avenues in our life. So thank you so much for watching, and don't hesitate to leave some of your animal stories. I'll be happy to read them.